Thanks for checking out this video. This is the 1999 installment of the 1990s horror movie superlative series that I'm doing with your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete. This is it. This is the last year. I mean, it's not it, because we're doing our overall picks, our wrap-up video, which actually will not be the week after posting this one. We're going to skip a week to give ourselves a little bit of time to kind of scrutinize our picks a little bit more and just kind of give ourselves a little bit of a breather. Then after that, I don't really know where we're going from there. We might try something different. We might do another series of the superlatives. But it is a lot of work to get through those, to watch a lot of movies. So we'll see what we're going to do. But, you know, I will let you guys know. Interested in these picks very much because I own a lot of these, which was kind of surprising to me. Although I'm not going to be able to show you all of them because some of them I own just on VHS. And my VHS is actually way in the back of a closet at the moment, so fishing it out would be a big pain. But reminder, finish my video, get all my picks and my reasons for my picks, then go to your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete's channel, which is linked in my description. Watch his video of the same name, get his picks, then come back here and then hit the community tab and vote in the poll on there for whose picks you like the most, basically. 90s has been really, really close. But let's get into it. My picks for 1999. My first pick, I do own it on VHS, and I really do enjoy this film. And some people may be kind of surprised because it's a bigger budget film. Sleepy Hollow. I think Sleepy Hollow is the best horror film of 1999. It looks phenomenal. I mean, it's done by Tim Burton, which, you know, you would assume it's going to be an outstanding film because it's Tim Burton. It looks amazing because of his directorial eye and the cinematography that goes into it. It's a reimagining, to a degree, of the Ichabod Crane Headless Horseman story, and it's done in a very interesting way, and they expand upon the story in a very interesting way, in my opinion. It also has phenomenal acting. You know, you have the likes of Christopher Walken in it, Christina Ricci, and Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp's the main character. He's Ichabod Crane, so he's mainly on the screen most, but, you know his acting is phenomenal. Also has Casper Van Dien for any Starship Trooper fans, or what's the other one he was in, like Star Raiders or something like that. I saw it. It's a horrible film, but anyway, Sleepy Hollow, it's a phenomenal film. It looks amazing. The score is amazing. Everything about it is really, really good. I feel like it also could be slotted into the most underrated category because not a lot of people talk about this film, and it's a good horror film. I understand why, because it's more of like a big budget, big studio joint, but, you know, I think it's great, and that's why Sleepy Hollow is my pick for most amazing for 1999. Now, the best so bad it's good for 1999. For me, that's going to have to be Wishmaster II. Yes, I have the Wishmaster collection, which you saw when I picked Wishmaster, the original, as most underrated. I think it was last year. Was that 98? Oh, no, sorry, that was 97. Wishmaster 2 is awful. The first Wishmaster is actually a good film. The second Wishmaster is terrible, but it's a lot of fun. The premise of it is the djinn is back, he's granting wishes, but he gets arrested for this crime that he doesn't have anything to do with. So it's kind of weird understanding why he actually wanted to go to jail, except that the scriptwriter just wanted it to go there. It's really funny how he just kills all these people in jail. And, like, the actor did a good job in the first film, but he comes off as, like, really kind of corny, cheesy in the second film. He usually has this really dumb look on his face that's kind of like... He, like, shows a lot of teeth, and he's like... I can't do it exactly. You got to see the film. But it is so over the top and ridiculous, including one moment where the wish he grants is for one guy who wants his lawyer to have sex with himself. And they literally do it on camera. It is so ridiculous and stupid, but it is hilarious at the same time. And there's a whole lot of that type of stuff in the film. The acting is bad. The premise is super bad. But it's still fun in a terrible way. So that is why my pick for the best so bad it's good for 99 is Wishmaster 2. Check it out if you like best so bad it's goods and you haven't seen it. Now going to my most WTF film. This one could also fit in the best gore category for the year. So I could see Uncle Pete's got to be picking this film. It could also be most unique. I don't know. It kind of fits in a lot of places. But I considered it for best gore, but I'm putting it in most WTF because when the big moment in this film hits, it is unbelievably WTF. That film is Takashi Miike's Audition. I've owned this film for a long time. I have to fess up to the fact that I told my uncle at one point to watch the movie without knowing anything about it, and he was really pissed off at me after the fact. Kind of proud of that one. It's literally a love story for the overwhelming majority of the film, except for the last, 20 minutes or so, that just takes this severe left turn into horror. And it's very extreme horror, and it's very WTF, especially because you've been set up with just this very kind of sweet, unassuming love story. And then it takes this gigantic turn. It gets very disturbing. It gets very graphic with the violence and the gore. And there's some really hard to watch stuff that ends up happening at the end of the film. It's really messed up. But the main reason I'm picking it as most WTF is how the bottom just drops out at that certain point towards the end of the film. It is such a WTF moment, and that makes it a very strong contender for the entire decade, in my opinion. This is a Japanese film, obviously. It is very out there, in a sense. If you have not seen this and you can handle some pretty messed up stuff, as Takashi Miike does, check this out for sure. So my most WTF film of 1999, Audition. Owned that for a while. It's a good one. Best gore category. Okay, I almost put this in most underrated because I also think it's a very underrated film that I love. It's a horror comedy, but it has excellent gore in my opinion, and that is Idle Hands, starring Devon Sawa, but also has Jessica Alba, Eldon Henson, something like that. He was in the Daredevil show as I can't remember his name. Foggy. I think it was Foggy. And Seth Green is in it as well. And this film... Vivica A. Fox as well, actually. This film is so much fun. It's a very good horror comedy. Devon Sawa is great in it. He's such, a great kind of, clueless stoner guy who's super lazy. The whole premise is, as it would say, idle hands. Idle hands are the devil's playground. So, Devon Sawa's character is just so lazy that he ends up having his hand possessed by a demon, in essence. He ends up cutting it off, which, is very a la Evil Dead. But they do it in a really funny way, and there's a lot of really good gore to it, including when he kills his friends, who are then reanimated as zombies, and one of them, he plunged a bottle into his forehead, Seth Green's character, and when he's resurrected, the bottle's still sticking out of his forehead, and there's blood, shaking around in the bottle. It's gross. It's really good effects. One of my favorite gore effects moments of the film, though, is when they put the severed hand in the microwave, and that sequence of, the blood spurting out of it all over the place is really gross. There's also a great moment where someone gets totally chopped up by a very large fan. That's cool. There's, pieces all over the place. It's got excellent gore. Also, like I said, this could be considered underrated because not enough people talk about it. Not enough people have potentially seen it. And it's awesome. It's so funny. It's so fun. And it actually has a pretty solid story to it, to be honest. But that is why my pick for best gore for 99 is Idle Hands. Now moving on to one that I own on VHS. I'm not going to pull it out. For most unique. Now, I also considered this for most WTF. And I could also consider it for most underrated. That is the David Cronenberg film Existenz. Now, this one is extremely well acted. It has Jude Law in it, as well as Jennifer Jason Leigh. I believe it's Jennifer Jason Leigh. And it is weird. It's David Cronenberg, so it's extremely weird. It's basically about someone who created this fleshy pod that you can plug into your spine to experience this kind of virtual reality game, but it starts really blurring the lines and you don't know, what's real and what's not real. And some really weird things end up happening in the film because, it's David Cronenberg. There's a lot of weird body horror to it. There's a lot of disgusting things that happen, but it is very dreamlike. It's very, very hard to figure out what's actually real and what's not real. You never know where the film is going. There's a lot of kind of random stuff that ends up happening. It has this really unsettling feeling throughout the entire film and a quite good ending to it as well. I think this one, like I said, could also be considered underrated, but it's a very interesting film. It has, some kind of like sci-fi-y elements because of like this fleshy pod technology. There's also something about like the pod actually getting a virus because it's actually partially alive. David Cronenberg, of course. He used stuff that looked kind of similar to that pod in his newer film, Crimes of the Future. But yeah, if you like David Cronenberg and you haven't seen Existenz, definitely see it. If you like super unique stories that are really messed up and there's a lot of like weird body horror stuff, Existenz. So that's why Existenz is my 1999 pick for most unique. I think it's quite good. Now my most overrated. And I need to preface this pick by saying when this film came out, I don't think it was overrated. It is overrated now, is my opinion of it. So I understand the importance of it historically for horror film, but right now to have as large of a fandom as it does, I think it's kind of overrated for what it is now. Now, that's not the fault of the filmmakers, obviously. That film is the Blair Witch Project. Now, obviously, it's very important because it started the found footage craze for the most part, and a lot of people look to it as the film that really is like the holy grail of found footage, and I get that because of how weird and interesting it was when it came out, and people actually thought it was real footage. It looked so real. They even had that kind of like promotional tie-in to the film that aired on cable prior to it that made it seem like this whole situation was actually real. So they did an amazing job for the time, but I think it's a very overrated film now because if you watch it now, having seen a lot of other films and a lot of other specifically found footage films, it's really boring, to be honest. Its pacing is awful. It's just really long and drawn out. Yes, the ending still has a lot of impact to it, but overall, it's just not as entertaining, not as fun. This is definitely a film that works really well with one viewing, but it worked really well with one viewing back when it came out in 1999. So that's my kind of disclaimer. I think it's overrated now. I don't think it was overrated when it came out because it was really interesting and important and scary at the same time. But yeah, so that's why my pick for most overrated is the Blair Witch Project. Now going on to the most underrated. So last year for 1998, I had a very, unknown South Korean film called Biozombie. And here is another Asian film. I believe this is a Japanese film that is called Wild Zero. This is put out by Synapse. I've had this one for quite some time. First of all, the cover is like super cool. I don't know how I'll put it so you can see it better, but it's really cool. So this is basically, if you know about Asian cinema, especially horror Asian cinema of like the early 2000s, this is very much like the early 2000s Asian cinema. It's very over the top. It has very weird, quirky, over the top characters. There's a lot of ridiculous things that happen in the film. There's very over the top gore to it, including some really awesome head explosions in the film. But it's basically about a punk band that ends up being involved in fighting zombies during a zombie apocalypse that occurs. But the zombies aren't the only bad guy. There are also other bad guys who aren't zombies, and it goes off the rails like so hard, but it's so interesting and it's so fun and it's like really upbeat throughout the entire thing. And if you like punk music, they put a lot of cool punk music into the film, but it has a great look, especially for how low budget it appears to be. And like I said, the gore, like head explosions happen in this film. There's one of this dude getting his finger shot off and then they're showing it. It's just like spurting blood. That's another big thing. Like the ridiculous arterial spray of these early 2000s Asian horror films was something of beauty, in my opinion. And that's my favorite type of gore. It was done by Takashi Miike a lot. To be honest, he didn't really do it so much in Audition, but in a lot of his other films he did, and it has it in Wild Zero. Wild Zero is a lot of fun. It's a vastly underrated film, because I've heard nobody talk about it. I don't know how many people have actually seen it or know about it, but it should be seen. It should be talked about more. This one is super fun. My pick for the most underrated for 1999, Wild Zero. And that's it. That wraps up the years. The only thing we're going to cover in not one more week, but in 2 weeks is going to be the wrap up. And I will tell you, looking at the list that I have worked up thus far, I might revise it a little bit more over time. It looks pretty good. A lot of people think that there was a lot of garbage in the 90s, but there's actually a lot of good, interesting stuff in the 90s. It's just that it doesn't get the attention, and it didn't go as hard and as big as the 80s did. But there's a lot of good stuff there. But again, watch your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete's video. Then come back to my channel. Go to the community tab, vote, because it's a good time. And then comments. We love reading the comments. What are your picks? What do you think of our picks? All that stuff. You guys have been engaging with this really well, and we're really appreciating it. It's a lot of fun. So, thank you for being with us for this. Do me a favor, hit subscribe and the notification bell button on my channel and Uncle Pete's channel. Really would appreciate that. That's the best way to repay us for all the work that we've put in with this. And it is work. It's a lot of work, to be honest, especially trying to watch all these films in a short period of time. So it was a lot of work, but it's fun too. But thank you everyone so much for being involved with this series. And until next time, keep it brutal.